That was awesome. So last year, we decided to bring in some outside speakers, researchers that could. I felt that what we needed was some people from the world of research to sort of give us a reality check on where some of these leading indicators were going. And so I invited Edison and Rick Ducey to come in, and he was kind enough to join us again this year. I think most of you know Rick. He has spent the last 11 years with BIA Kelsey, and before that he spent 17 years at the NAB. That's where he and I first met many moons ago, when I was still in the consulting business and made an attempt at writing a book entitled Radio Stations Turnaround Strategies That Work. It's a real mouthful. So we've known each other off and on for a long time. So today, again, he's going to, I think, help give us a bit of a reality check. So, Rick?
Oh, thank you, Jim. Well, we'll see about the reality part. I have a bunch of data. I mean, one of the things that we do at BIA Kelsey is data. We do primary research. We do forecasting. A number of our charts and figures and so on have already been presented today, I've seen, and probably yesterday too. So if I start to get too redundant, start balling up paper and throwing it at me or something. So what I'm going to do is sort of, when I get to the data part, if it's something that I'm not aware of having been shown before, I'll spend a little bit more time. If it's something that I've seen up on the screen, I'll just comment on it directionally maybe, just to set the context and move along. So generally what I want to do in my time today, for my part, is to talk about what's up for this year particularly, and then how does that set us up for the out years, say 2012, 13, 14, 15, the next several years. So I'll have some thoughts and some forecasting to show about that. And by the way, Mark Fratrick may be familiar to some of you guys. He's our economist at BIA Kelsey. So he's our forecasting guru. And he will bet his personal career, and I'll give you his home number. You can call him at 3 in the morning after you're through calling Hillary to give him your opinion about his forecast. So yeah, contextually kind of set it up, get our minds around what's going on, talk a little bit about the economic environment, and a number of the data points here are things you're already familiar with, so I won't spend a lot of time with it, just sort of set some boundaries. And then a little bit more on the shifting ad pie. We've got some forecasts. We've seen some numbers out to 2014. We're just releasing our new forecast that goes out to 2015. Pretty similar directionally, same trend is there, but I'll show some of those numbers. We cover 12 different local media platforms, directory, search, mobile, radio, TV, newspapers, cable. So I'll spend a little bit of time across those 12 different platforms with the assumption that maybe you're less familiar with some of those other platforms and some of the numbers and forecasts that people put out around those. When we talk about the shifting ad pie, those are nice slices to go after from a local media perspective, as Tom says, not just a radio perspective. Deal of the day is something that popped up is sort of exciting, and I know, Owen, you were interested in hearing more about that. So we put a forecast out about deal of the day, so I'll show some data slides on the DOTD, as we call it, deal of the day, and then a couple of summary thoughts about 2011. So when we think about the local media environment and where the opportunity is, local is key to that, and that's obviously come up thematically in the discussions today and certainly yesterday, I'm sure. Local is a critical place to be, and what does that mean? I think Tom speaks to it very passionately and eloquently. Jay, you did also, and I'm sorry I was on a conference call, so I missed a lot of what Jim was saying, but from personal knowledge, I know that they have it very dialed in as well. So local is critical. I mean, people are trying to crack that nut. From the top down, you see Google, Yahoo, AOL trying to crack the local nut with not great success usually, and radio is great growing from the bottom up, from local, trying to aggregate some business. really important part of the puzzle that local radio operators have as they become local media operators more and more. Mobile is such a critical platform. I think maybe it was you, John, that just said, somebody was talking about how we're all going mobile. In some demographics, I'm sure you've seen the numbers, I mean, particularly Hispanics, for example, over half of that demographic, their internet experience is off a smartphone. So it's the internet, more and more are going to connected devices. John, you were talking about the Cisco research. They're showing video is going to be a huge amount of the bandwidth going forward, and those bits will be traveling over 3G and 4G networks particularly, but even Wi-Fi for the last 100 feet. So the consumption environment and the distribution of content to the consumer will traverse several different networks, wired and wireless, and go to a device that is mobile, but even what mobile means is sort of morphing a little bit now. Is an iPad a mobile device, or is it a computing device? And it'll get more and more confusing, but if you figure people are going to bring their content on some device over some network, wherever they are, if that's kind of the baseline assumption, probably a good one to work with that will be a lively and useful one for years to come. That's a going assumption. People don't sit down with a clock radio and turn on and listen to it for several hours. That's gone, and people don't sit in front of a TV and turn on and watch it for several hours. So there's all different kinds of complexity in the environment. And social is becoming an interactive experience, media generally, and local media more specifically. And that trend is going to grow even faster. So some of the key drivers this year we see in the marketplace for advertising and for consumption, that kind of triad of local, mobile, and social, that's what people are trying to figure out. What the service looks like, what the consumption pattern looks like, and how to monetize it. So Facebook is huge, but if you're a media company, how do you make money off it? I mean, it's a promotional kind of platform. There's no direct way to monetize it. So you have to wrap it up into pricing and packaging across other kinds of inventory that you have available, and just make your general offer so compelling that they'll go with you. So there's a number of key drivers, just a few of them. Location, local, we can dial that down to local is, what is local? Well, today local for me is the Colleton Plantation Resort, even though I live in Bethesda, Maryland. So local's where I am, not where I live. Well, yeah, I can check in and say I'm here and start getting some offers from Hilton Head Domino's Pizza or something. That is becoming a more and more significant part of the marketplace. So privacy, will people actually share that? Yeah, I mean, amazingly they will, and particularly the younger demographics will do that. So just one data point from some research we've been doing. We do research of consumers, as well as our focus particularly on the industry side is small and medium businesses, typically companies that have 100 or fewer employees. So yeah, over half of them will say, yeah, I'll give up my location, and people can make money off me for that. I'm happy with that as long as I get some kind of a equivalent service, a relevant coupon or something like that. Google searches. Mobile is a huge platform for use and for advertising. More and more searches are off of mobile devices now. So when you think search, you start to think about mobile search. And that's text-based search as well as smartphone-based search of some kind of browser. And we're talking about aggregations of people and what's the definition of a community. I loved it. What Tom, you were saying, some of these, like Pandora is not a community, it's a country. So, I mean, in fact, you look at the numbers, the number of Facebook users, it ends up being about the third largest country. And it's a good point. Is it a community or not? In the aggregate, there's a whole bunch of communities across the Facebook platform. When you look at it in the aggregate, a huge number, but then you have to figure out how do I get to specific kinds of communities. It starts to become a challenge, and the flip of that always is the opportunity. So the economics, I won't go through a lot of this in detail. Yeah, 2010, a little bit friendlier to us. Kind of a curious recovery where the jobs aren't coming back, and that impacts consumer confidence, which impacts what advertisers are willing to do. We'll see some signs of consumer spending in the fourth quarter. Advertising, particularly automotive has come back kind of nicely. The even years are great for political, especially for TV, sorry, for radio. For this year, continued growth, limited relief, and unemployment, it sort of seems to be a structural thing. Companies like sitting in all that cash, and the operating margins are nice, cut a lot of the expense out of their structure. And with uncertainty ahead, do we really want to incorporate another layer of expenses? And even I saw today, AOL laid off a bunch of more people. So, even they're trying to figure out what their future is. The consumers are starting to spend more. Good. We'll see if there's some sort of inflation around the corner here. The movement from traditional media to interactive media, we've heard it before. We just keep seeing it. It's not a long-term trend. It's not just a flash in the pan. This is going to keep happening. And our forecast shows that 25+% of the ad pie going out. So it's not going to be 100% of the ad pie. And in fact, there was some retrenchment where we saw some advertisers move back into so-called traditional media like TV and radio. They experimented a little bit. I'm not sure if experiment is the correct word. They changed their media mix, put a little more into digital, and saw some fall off in consumer response. And I think they're trying to figure out the purchase funnel, how they do the media mix allocation between the big guns, the radios and TVs, and driving it down more towards point of consumption or point of purchase, like search and listings and things like that. So what's the right balance? I think different parts of the industry are trying to, on the advertising side, the buy side, are trying to understand how to use this appropriately. And it's not just choice of medium, it's also the creative and the execution of that creative across the platforms. So it's a more complicated story than just medium. What's radio share, what's TV share, what's Google share? It's what's the creative, what's the pricing and packaging across that, what's the creative execution, what's the call to action. So there's a lot of work going on there, trying to figure out how to get the ad spend in there. So we have our look at the economic environment. Just generally the economy, a lot of ups and downs over the past several quarters, looking ahead through 2011. Yeah, we're sort of optimistic. We see things picking up generally. So the rising tide kind of thing in the economy is mildly encouraging. One of the things we started to do just as a tracking kind of contextual service for the industry was we came up with baskets of stocks. And I can tell you the individual stocks if you want. They're approximations. We needed to use pretty much pure plays to get a more focused, less noisy picture of things. But we put together baskets of stocks just to get not a precise kind of sense of what's going on, but a rough sense, a directional sense in different parts of the media industry. So benchmark to the S&P 500, we have a basket of stocks we call local media stocks, where most of the revenues come out of local media. And you can see the kind of ups and downs, but halfway things started to move apart, and media, local media particularly, are starting to outpace nicely S&P 500. And the S&P 500, the story here is if you look back just 2 years, a happy story. The S&P 500 has increased, it's doubled over the past couple of years, which is nice. If you look a couple of years before that, it becomes less happy. But what the heck, we're starting back on the right road. And even while the S&P is doubling, you see media stocks increasing even above that. So the media sector is interesting now from a economic growth perspective. Within individual media, you just show the curves here, ups and downs, but kind of a crawling back up for radio stocks, which is nice. And again, these are just the public companies and pretty much the pure play radio companies as we could. A little bit noisier on TV, but kind of a nicer rise towards the end. For Yellow Pages, if you think radio is tough, be happy you're not in the Yellow Pages business. A couple of years ago, one of the things our company does is we do a Yellow Pages conference. The Yellow Pages people, for whatever reason, call themselves directional media. So it's a directional media conference. I came from that conference, and that was in Atlanta. Then I went to, this is when the radio show was in, where was it in Texas? San Antonio or Austin? Austin, yeah. So I went from Atlanta to Austin, and the radio guys were all saying, "Oh man, what a horrible industry we're in." And I'm like, you don't know how good you have it. And I'll talk a little bit more about the directional media, the Yellow Pages, in a second. And then if you look at online, and we have all the details in this. We update this at the close of the exchanges on Wednesday. So this is fresh from yesterday, and we published it on our website on Thursday morning. So this is today's news. If you go to our website, biakelsey.com, and click on the local media index, it's kind of a flashy thing in the homepage. It'll show whatever it is, like 50 or 60 stocks. So the online local market cap index is a handful of semi-odd stocks, but they're local and maybe they're sort of indicative. But here you can see, okay, people are trying to figure out this local digital media thing. Got a big jump, didn't lose anything, and now they're starting to come back up again. So we have, as our clients, we have different products, data, reports, consulting services, but the AOLs, the Pandoras, the Googles, the Yelps, they're all coming to us. Our focus, both our company, BIA, and the company we acquired a couple of years ago, Kelsey, our focus has always been on local media, and these companies that have been earning a living off of more national, regional selling are now dialing into local. I see that as the next big growth for their companies. And so they keep coming to our conferences, and we're doing projects with them, and they're saying, oh man, you guys are right at the center of the storm here. Local is hot. 2011 is the year for local. So you have all these kinds of media companies trying to earn a living off of the local market. So from AOL Patch to Google coming in with Google Places, that's where they're coming into, is the local market. So this isn't entirely reflective of what's going on the online side. Yeah?
What was the event that took place that caused that single spike?
Yeah, it's probably, there's only like 3 or 4 stocks in there, so I would guess it's probably company specific, and I forgot to ask Mark Fratchik about that one inflection. But I'll find out about that and get back to you. Sorry, I don't know the answer to that. But I think we have like 4 companies in that little basket, so one company probably hired 2 more salespeople. Newspaper, up and down, and it's sort of a different story depending upon the market and the paper and so on. But generally, you know, as with the other media stocks, other than Yellow Pages, trending upward. And then, you know, stocks that are media stocks or public companies, we're not quite sure where else to put them. They're in several different of these segments. What do they look like? So again, directionally, ups and downs, but recently, growth. So sort of happy except for Yellow Pages in media land. Doing well in the aggregate, doing even better than the S&P, which is pretty nice. And again, if you tell just that part of a story, it's okay. If you go back to where we came from, it's like, still not quite back to where we were. Oh yeah, outdoor advertising, that's one of the other places we track too, which is a relatively small amount of overall spend, maybe less than 5%, but that's on a high growth trajectory too, so it's been capturing a lot of attention, particularly digital out-of-home media, which involves video screens. You can do a lot with the video screen. That video, the sight, sound, color, motion kind of thing is very interesting to people. The infrastructure, the networking, the screens, the content management systems, and the connectivity, all much cheaper than they were 5 years ago. And
they're selling it like broadcasting.
Exactly, they're selling it like broadcasting. So it's become much more normalized, rationalized, the buying, selling process, the platforms, the buying systems, the ad networking is all there. There's been some consolidation. So it's becoming easier to buy. So the outdoor, CBS, Clear Channel, they're into this, but the technology in terms of the displays, but also the technology in terms of placing and measuring buys has become really interesting. And you probably have seen reports about you're driving your car and your car transponder talks to the sign, and all of a sudden, you go, it's a Volkswagen, and it says, "Hey Jim, how you doing? Thanks for your work with the digital channel on my Volkswagen." It's like, wow, how did I know it was me? So that's coming along. And search, online advertising and search, the market cap for these kinds of companies, the Googles and Yahoos, we know that that's pretty high. They took a little hit, but they're, again, directionally climbing back and doing well. So we've already seen this chart going out to 2014. What does it look like going to 2015? Continued growth, a little bit more off of the 2014 line that Jay was describing to us earlier. And I had preliminary up there. We're still tweaking that a little bit with our assumptions and drivers. But same story here that Jay showed us. Digital is going to become an increasing portion on average of media spend, and we see that going up to maybe 20% or more of spending by 2015. So it's a nice little piece of revenue growth, and if you can keep these 50% margins that we've heard about in terms of getting digital business, not bad. So not a big part of the overall spend, but it's high margin and it's incremental dollars to what you have now. So good piece of business to go after. Going to be a little bit hard to read, but the pie as we see it, 2010, Jim and I were talking about this. It's always interesting what a big bite out of the pie direct mail takes, but there it is. People like those little coupons, and they bring them in there, and the small and medium business operators say, it worked, I'll buy some more. I think the response rate in those things, if you get to 1%, it's a miracle, but a lot of money gets poured into that hole, and if they get 1% response or 0.5% response, that seems to be good enough. So radio is in the mix here, overall at 12.2%, and these are all the different local media platforms we track. One of the growth ones is this, basically reputation management. It's electronic presence and reputation management. So as you get reviews, your advertisers get reviewed on Yelp. If they get bad reviews, how do they manage that? And as social media becomes a bigger part of the average person's experience, they're sharing things. Is there any kind of validation, or how do you respond to that? Who's saying what about me? So there's sort of an industry that ends up coming out of advertising budgets. Okay, if I do all these online ads, help me monitor them. What are people saying about me? And I want to be able to do something proactively about it. So this little tiny slice over here, email reputation presence management is a growing part of the mix. And it'd be something, if you're not offering it as part of your packages, it'd be something I think it'd be very worthwhile to offer into your advertisers.
Can you go back to
Yeah.
that up there anyway? Yeah. Given the newspapers 24/6 and Yellow Pages is 14/4, and we saw the chart 2 seconds ago about Yellow Pages and its downward direction. Newspapers obviously are struggling as well. What do you see those compressing to? Is that on the next slide?
Next slide, exactly. Good segue.
Sorry.
Yeah, so, and speaking of compressing, I decided to make the image even smaller. So newspapers, we're looking at 2015, just to show it side by side, 13%, and then Yellow Pages,
20, well,
where do we have that?
should use the same colors, Rick.
What's the big yellow at the top?
Oh, this is print Yellow Pages, 4%. Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't even find my own. This is having trouble reading. So this direct mail's up here. Yellow Pages is down to 4%. So, and then the newspapers are down to 13%.
From what? 18?
Yeah.
23.
No, 28.
No, not
19.
Yeah.
You're saying direct mail?
Oh, well, the numbers are different on the earlier slide.
That is true.
See, there's 23.6 there.
Nationwide.
And then 19.1 there.
Local ads.
Okay, this is, yeah. Nationwide. So this is, I'm not actually sure what the difference is between these two slides. This is, I think the difference is these slides talk about spending just on local media. So you can have national spending that goes as part of a national campaign. We also break it out. So these pie charts here are just of money targeted to a specific geography. So it's not just a U.S.
Single market.
Exactly right. Yep. Single market or a specific set of markets, like a regional buy, but subnational buys. That's what the split out here is.
Okay, so you got Yellow Pages from 17.7 down to, what did we decide over here?
It's 7.7 here, and then 4% was over here. Print Yellow Pages.
6.5% because now you've broken out Yellow Pages Internet and Yellow Pages Print.
Right.
So basically, it didn't fall all that much.
Yeah.
And what's the direct mail line?
Is this out of one of those market-specific reports?
Exactly.
Just started?
Exactly.
You have newspapers
22 on that one to 27. So
The way newspaper, I think, is that's both their print and online revenues.
Both.
Yeah.
Out of home goes from what to what?
Out of home goes from 4.9% 2010 local, what we call local into local, local spending into local media, and then it goes up to 6.1%.
You think the combination of newspapers, online and print, is going to decline 30%?
Yeah.
Why not direct mail then? To that kind of degree?
People like direct mail. I mean, they keep spending on it.
Yeah, well, people like using it, that consumers don't necessarily like getting it.
Correct. So it's a you know, kind of a paradox.
What will happen, is there any forecast or discussion about the post office and how it's going to deal with its deficits, and will it still be there to handle?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you guys subscribe to The Economist. They did a little experiment with Saturday delivery. They would deliver it on Saturday, and the post office was saying maybe we won't deliver it on Saturday anymore. So they expressed it, you know, FedExed it for Saturday delivery. It's like, oh, that's crazy. And then they did a little follow-up survey. What'd you think of that? And I said, I think that's crazy. And then they just went back to delivering it by mail for Saturday delivery. So, you know, one option is people that are using the mails could pay for more expensive distribution. And I mean, they have some deals that are really interesting. Like if I buy things off Amazon, I don't know if you guys have done this. If you haven't, it's a secret that works for me anyway in my zip code. If you buy something, say an Insignia HD radio, you can pay for express shipping, and it's like $30 to have it express shipped. Or you can get free 5 to 9 day shipping. So I used to buy the express shipping if I was impatient, which is often, get it and be very happy. And then I said, you know what, I don't really care how fast it comes here. I'll get the free shipping, and it's like 5 to 9 days. Comes the next day.
Yeah.
I said, so I was like, duh. So sorry, I was slow on that curve. Yeah.
This is for late in the evening.
Hmm?
If you believe that number, know also that the only organization in that whole pie chart that does any accountability journalism, investigative journalism, that kind of stuff, is newspapers. And if you take away 30% of their revenues, and they've already had about a 20% reduction, who's going to do that?
Right.
Yeah.
Serious question for
Democracy.
Yes.
It's I mean, one of the things I do is I teach every so often. So I've been teaching a class at George Washington University, and I was talking with one of my other colleagues there, and she had a foreign affairs correspondent come in to speak to her class, and she was saying, okay, I'm a foreign affairs correspondent, and my business model is I don't have a job. I'm a freelancer, and this is a person who used to be a major, you know, writer for a major publication. And she says, you know, I'm always operating at a deficit because I have to front on my travel, and if I don't sell enough stories, I don't cover it. So I mean, that's foreign affairs coverage, and then investigative journalism. There's websites where you can, here's a list of 50 topics. Yeah, I'll pay $2 for that topic. Go do the story. If they aggregate enough money, they'll do it. It's a tough business on the journalism side, trying to.
Yeah, but we're all going to pay the price. Never mind.
Yeah, I mean, I had.
Parcel on that is NPR, because NPR is as Vivian Schiller pointed out before the press club on Tuesday, before she was gone on Wednesday.
Who knows what Thursday will bring?
They don't do parachute journalism. I mean, they have a bureau in the war zones, and they actually live there and report the stories. You'll get that from NBC, CBS, the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, the LA Times, the Chicago Tribune. I mean, that's all gone.
Yeah.
It all used to be there, and that's a direct.
Yeah, and it's interesting to hear this. Yeah, exactly. I mean, so there's newspapers should be nationalized, or there should be nonprofit institutions, 501c3s or something like that. One of my friends is, I was talking to her about newspapers, and this is just sort of a private conversation. She says, well, I'm very upset that newspapers might not be around because I think society needs them. And so I said, okay, so what newspapers do you read? I personally don't read them. I just think that society needs them.
John, you're not going back and forth on this. So I'm not convinced whatsoever that that's the scenario that's going to play out for a couple of reasons. The pendulum's swinging very hard the other way right now.
Which scenario?
The scenario that the Americans will have that watchdog. And one of the reasons is, first of all, most of the newspapers stopped being watchdogs and became editorializers long ago. The second is
assumption one.
Well, it's pretty true.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty true generally. The second part was the pendulum is swinging really hard the other way, but the fact of the matter is, long ago, newspapers should have been pooling resources to have one or two correspondents in any international place, so you'd have a couple of different voices versus competing in places they didn't need to compete. And it's going to take them a while to rebuild their entire infrastructure to fit the new world, but they're still so top-heavy that in the way that they run themselves. So they've got to fix that. But they're not just going to disappear. I guarantee that isn't the scenario.
Just picking one vertical, automotive, and happily my synchronization is complete. Sorry about that. We can see, looking at 2010, 2014, radio gets dinged a little bit according to our forecast model in the automotive vertical. Let's see, mobile goes from almost nothing, 0.2%, up to 1%, so still relatively small, but a 5 times increase, so relatively a big increase. So I'll give these slides to Jim, and he'll distribute them around to people so you have them. A lot of these slides have been from our webinars, which, by the way, we do regularly throughout the year, and they're free, and we reveal a number of these data points in those webinars. So if you, I think you're probably on our hit list and have heard about those. So that's where a number of these things come from, if you're ever wondering what we do. And just looking at the Arbitron markets, you know, the good old days and then the bad new days, and then starting to claw back up. So if we expand that timeline a little bit further back, we can see just how bad it was. So even relatively in the past couple of years, things are getting better.
Of course, the other big difference is back in 2000, you would have to pay 60% less for the Arbitron rate.
Yeah. Right, exactly.
And so when you add that factor in, your growth rate has just been kicked.
Yeah. Yep. Sure. Just saying. Going on to 2015, the mix, and Jay already spoke to this, so I won't really hammer it too much. You know, the dark blue is the online revenue according to our forecast model. And if you kind of look at the blue lines, you want to have growth, there's some growth, but that nice incremental growth in the digital side, it's just worth paying attention to. It's not going to be a company saver, but it's something that you definitely want to pay attention to. So I'll just go through a few of the different media platforms that we cover. Broadcast, we've already spent a little bit of time about that. Directional, interactive, vertical, mobile, and social. And I'll just pick a couple things to comment on each of these. So for broadcast media, this is from one of our webinars we did a couple of months ago. Looking at both radio and TV, what are some of the big things that we see happening? Mobile DTV rolls out nationally. That's going to be interesting, and I'm personally curious to see how that impacts the radio listening experience. We were part of the consumer showcase that was operated in Washington, D.C. for about 6 months, where 9 TV stations had, I think, 22 video services, and also 3 radio services were broadcast over the mobile DTV signal. So there were 3 public radio signals transmitted over mobile DTV. So when we talk about HD radio and the infrastructure and the risk reward there, it was really interesting to me that on the Samsung Moment 900 mobile DTV cell phone, I could get 22 free channels of TV, and I could also get 3 radio signals. That was part of the mix, and it was part of the electronic program guide. It got presented on a platform as equal to video services. And that was not very much part of the research effort. It was sort of funded and run by TV people. And so that didn't really show up very much in the data. But that's just an option of how to get to market using the mobile DTV signal as well. There's a couple hundred stations, some major groups. There's several different national initiatives, Open Mobile Video Coalition, the Mobile Content Venture, and now the Mobile 500, different organizations with different relative points of emphasis trying to make mobile DTV happen in 2011. I don't think anybody has that in a revenue budget. It's more of an expense item in 2011, but it'll start to pop in 2012, riding that huge trend towards mobile, personal, location-independent media. Cable cord cutting, you probably heard about that. People are saying, you know what, why should I pay $120 a month for cable when I can get, I just found out about this, don't tell anybody, you can get TV for free. And with Netflix for $9 a month, you get your movie services. So with Hulu Basic, Netflix, and free over-the-air TV, that's not bad for less than $10 a month.
So what over the top is?
Yeah, over the top technically is you're providing a service over somebody else's infrastructure. So if you're Comcast and you sell video services, it's your cables, your coax, your fiber, your servers, your everything. If you're over the top, like Netflix, you don't care if you're getting over Comcast, if you're getting over Fios, if you're getting over Uverse. You have no infrastructure costs for distribution. So it's over the top of somebody else's distribution network. So you could have the, going back to John Erickson, that Jim, you were talking about, we actually were working with his group a little bit too. As a quick aside, he had an interesting approach to content, which was he hired a bunch of software people to be his program development and production people, saying the software paradigm, it's easy, it's modular, it's scalable, and it's reusable. Why don't we just do that for TV content? It's so much more efficient and cost effective, and we can produce so much more content. This retirement living network will work like that. So his programming head was a Silicon Valley software guy. For various reasons that didn't go as far as he wanted it to.
Was the mobile TV actually wireless? I mean, were you getting that over-air signal into that phone? Or was
Yeah, I mean, that's
was that 3G or 4G service?
Yep, no, it's such an excellent question. So we worked with Harris Interactive doing a consumer research part of this. And so we had, there's a number of curious elements to it, but we had basically a cell phone device, a 3G cell phone device on the Sprint network. It was a Samsung Moment 900, and it had an MDTV chip in there from Samsung. So it had the MDTV chip in there and had a little antenna to get the signal. And so we were exposing people to this. Part of the trial also involved using ClearWire, the 4G Clear service. And we used netbooks, we used cell phones, we used DVD players, LG. We had several different consumer brands and several different form factors for that. But it was over-the-air TV. But it was curious because it was just hard as hell to get people to understand that it was TV. They were assuming it was 3G or Wi-Fi or something. We said, no, this is from a TV station. And I've said this a number of times, so if I've said it to this group, please excuse me, but my opinion and my experience with some surveys and focus groups is that the average American doesn't have a clue what local TV is. One of my favorite focus groups where we were doing a project and it was critical that we got the focus group thinking about and talking about local TV news. And this was actually for some litigation that was very arcane. And so the lawyers wanted to put some wording into a survey. And I said, that's not going to work. You're not going to get what you want back. And they said, what are you talking about? It's obvious to us. And I said, yeah, but you're not average Americans, thank God. So they said, what you're asking for, that has no meaning to people. And they said, you're nuts, Rick. And I said, that may be true. However, put some money into it and let's run a couple of focus groups and I'll show you. So they did. They put some money up. We had some focus groups up there. And it took 20 minutes of pretty intensive grilling by the moderator, by the facilitator, to get the first person to say, oh, we did these in Washington, D.C. I know what you're talking about now. And this is a 66-year-old gentleman. And he said, you're talking about like when TV used to be local, like when WTTG used to be the local station here before Fox bought it and moved it to New York. And then the rest of the group says, yeah, that's right. So, I mean, people don't know what local TV is. The focus has been around content, not around a distribution medium. And I've already heard that in New York, it's 99% cable, satellite, and alternate distribution, 1% over the air. So people don't know what local TV is. And so when we're doing a mobile DTV, we're trying to explain a benefit to them, but it's actually a feature that they don't care about. This comes from a mobile TV, and what does that mean?
Just think about my own case. I haven't been, the only way I've gotten TV since 1979 is through a cable.
Right.
My kids have never known anything about
Exactly. And so this is the American experience. And so this is funded by broadcasters, so of course there's a certain lens being applied to this. Isn't mobile DTV cool? Yeah. What's mobile DTV? And when I used to be at NAB running a research group there, we did, back in the day, AM stereo research. And it was the same thing then. Do you know what AM stereo is? Yes. Are you able to get it? Yes. Well, what do you think of it? Oh, it's much better. And so, again, I was arguing, you guys don't know what you're talking about, let's do some research. And so we did research, not just in AM stereo markets, but in markets where there was no AM stereo. and compared the two results, and they were identical. So people in markets without AM stereo got AM stereo and thought it was terrific.
That was the HD problem.
Exactly right. Yes, I mean, we were talking about marketing and you know, promotion and things like that. I think we need to get our game up better on the broadcast side of things if we want to make a point out of it and have that actually be part of a benefit statement instead of a feature. And you know, feature consumers don't care about. That's something that we care about.
So
But
if you were to do a focus group, you would probably find
absolutely.
most people would say the HD radio sounds wonderful. I listen to it every day.
Exactly right.
I own an
Yeah.
HD radio.
Exactly.
Which is why there are none in the stores, because there's no demand, because everybody says I already got it.
Right, and there's some other complications.
We're there.
Right. Congratulations, gentlemen.
All we had to do was say HD and we read it.
Yeah.
You didn't have to buy a single piece of equipment.
It's-
all perception. You don't have to buy that transmitter.
You know, it's the thing I like to, and there's a whole bunch of complicated issues here, but just to have a little bit of fun. HD radio, in my opinion, would work great if it worked the way TV stereo worked, which was when TV stereo was first introduced, oh, it's a huge new consumer benefit. It's like, I thought I already got stereo. You mean I don't get stereo on my TV? What kind of TV did I just buy? It's like, oh no, it's a wonderful innovation. It's a beautiful benefit that the industry is bringing to you. And consumers were like, what? You've been cheating me. I mean, I didn't get stereo before? And so at best it was a negative. And at worst, it was like, there's a whole missed opportunity here. And so how do we, the innovation curve was incredibly steep for TV stereo because they just put it in. They just went into TV. So it was the adoption was 100% because when you bought a TV, you couldn't buy without TV stereo. So it'd be kind of cool for HD radio. It's not a huge consumer benefit. It should just be an upgrade. I mean, people are used to upgrades. I get version 2 of the software and it does, you know, things better. It has fewer bugs. So the fact that it's not digital is a bug. So the next release of radio is we'll fix that bug and now it's digital.
And that's
So
about
you're
what's
saying-
going to happen with it showing up in cars.
Right, exactly. Except for it won't be RF, it'll be, you know, 3G, 4G, or, you know, some sort of...
And you're going to start getting calls from all your listeners. Why is there about 20 seconds in does this thing pop, make a...
Right, yeah.
Why is there a change?
Yep. So I'm spending more time...
Excuse me. So
Yes.
you're saying that the consumer doesn't appreciate, for lack of a better term, HD radio.
I think that's right. I mean...
They don't really discern any audio quality improvement.
No, let's take it one
They
step
think it's
further.
already there.
Right,
Honestly,
right.
I've been in studies. They think they're already getting HD radio and they think it sounds so much better.
Right.
Honest to God.
Right.
And the reality of it is, if you think about everything that we've had that's come along in the way of improvement, until the consumer really does perceive that there is some reason to go out and spend money for it, they ain't gonna go do it.
Well, but it's even worse. Not only do they perceive they've already got it, but if they go into a store looking for a radio,
They
there are
can't
none
find it.
there, so that only confirms that I must already own it.
Right. It's a, from the consumer perspective, it's a frustrating experience. And we do tech research in the consumer electronics business, and you guys probably know this too. I mean, typically you need a 10x benefit for a price increase. So if I'm increasing it $1, the consumer needs to have 10 times the benefit, or they're not interested. So what's the 10x benefit for HD radio? I'm not saying it's not there. I'm just saying it's not in consumers' heads. Right.
I would submit that as they become a part of the experience you purchase with a car, and it is apparent that there are additional stations and choices, and at home, when they tune to the same number, they don't have those choices.
Right.
They would then look
And so I'm having a little bit of fun here because I'm really on your page, Jim. I think if some of the ads are saying, you know, there's all these services that you don't get. It's sort of a negative sell or a takeaway sell. I mean, it can work sometimes. But if the programming was interesting and if people are aware of it and the value proposition was created powerfully and on a sustained basis, needle might move. But it's not, that's not what's happening now, I don't think.
One of the HD radio lines did the, you know, ultra clear thing of saying, and you'll get the station, or no, this wasn't HD, this was not the alliance, it was a retail.
Right.
Said you'll get the stations in between the stations. Now, what could be more clear than that?
I mean, there's, do you remember the campaign radio, What Would Life Be Without It? So that was a big industry initiative, and it's like, I mean, I don't know. It's like, can you imagine Detroit saying, you know, highways, what would highways be without cars or something like that? It's like, that's kind of a crazy promotion, isn't it? And so, I don't know, broadcasters do a lot of things
Don't be too hard on that.
marvelously well. I'm not sure promoting their own industry is one of them.
One of the things we talked about at lunch was, apropos of this HD stuff, is how do you consume it? I mean, we don't have the speaker systems, and people are just consuming it on this. They can't, it doesn't
Right.
reproduce well enough.
Sure.
Kids come into my class, they plop down their laptop or whatever it is, put their earphones in, and they're in another world. That's how they consume audio. And not paid speakers and
There's another whole topic. We should worry about if anyone's going to be able to hear anything, because those earbuds are blasting so loud.
Exactly.
We're in an oral medium here.
Right.
Well, that is in fact.
No, you're good. You're good.
Hearing loss in this country is going up by a substantial margin.
What'd you say?
Then they won't mind that AM quality. Maybe the music will come back to AM.
You can have 10 multicasts.
It's true that 70 million Americans are experiencing some degree of hearing loss.
You know something about HD radio? It's much easier on your ears. We'll start selling.
For HD radio, I mean, in consumer electronics, I mean, selling one benefit is difficult. If you sell a package of benefits, not features, but real benefits, the fact that it's HD probably isn't enough to get consumers excited. If you say, here are 5 things that are important to you that you can now do with this, then it starts to get interesting. If you just think how other kinds of consumer electronics are sold. Content trumps technology. We do forecasts for what's going to happen in the industry. So one of my forecasts was, we've been hearing so much about technology, 3G, Wi-Fi, mobile, social, all that kind of stuff. I said in 2011 we're going to start to see more headlines about content owners setting the terms of discussion, which I think is starting to happen, where Netflix, oh my gosh, what a great stock, wish I bought it earlier. It's a new technology platform. Reed Hastings is so brilliant. And what's 2011 going to look like? Brakes are on, because he's making money off of studio content, and the studio is saying, why are we giving him this window, and why are we giving him this preferred rates? So the content guys are starting to say, all this money's going to the tech stocks, bring it back to the media stocks. And so we're starting to see that, I think. The studio is renegotiating terms for platforms like Netflix. They're trying to figure out what they want to put on Hulu or not. And also the windows in theatrical film releases. You know, when do you go to DVD? When do you go to VOD? How long do you let the theatrical release go? So the time dimension, the pricing dimension, and what platforms get what when, generally is really going to set the terms of what happens with these technology platforms. Certainly this year, and probably for several years more to come, as they figure out revenue yield optimization.
Has BIA been involved in any of the testing of the movies where there have been a few releases where they just put it everywhere all at once to see what the difference was?
The different platforms? We have not done that research now. And internet learns how to scale. I talked about bandwidth, and this is that comment that John was talking about. I just came from a Credit Suisse meeting in Miami, where the FCC asserted that based on their research and forecast, the world, or at least America, which is the world to the FCC, is going to run out of bandwidth in 5 years unless we do something. And that something means taking spectrum away from TV, among other steps. And then we had people from Verizon, AT&T stand up there and said, we got no spectrum crunch. You know, we have several different dimensions to go. First of all, we've got spectrum warehouse we can use. Our current spectrum, you know, we have a lot of headroom to grow. We can control it with pricing if we want. And the pay-as-you-go pricing has been released in Canada recently, so we're getting some experience with how consumers like that, which they don't. They like flat rate pricing better. So in the media business, you know, what's the distribution cost? The experience hasn't been happy with pay-as-you-go pricing in Canada. Is that generalizable to the US? Probably. Verizon, it's all you can eat. No, now it's not all you can eat. So there will be some experimentation with the pricing side of it. In terms of the wireless side, 4G is out there, starting to get rolled out. That's a whole new dimension. And on the wireless side, it's easy. You can make as much spectrum as you want, basically. Just drop in more microcells. That's a matter of economics. The other way the internet learns how to scale, as you were saying, Alan, was, Dick, is Wi-Fi. So this device here also does Wi-Fi. Driving down the highway, I'm going to have to be connected to 3G or 4G, but in this room, I can get off the Wi-Fi off the wireless network onto the Wi-Fi network. So the cellular carriers are learning that, and it'll be seamless as there's handoffs. And I'm getting you off my congested 3G backbone, and I'll put you on the Wi-Fi where it's free to me, and I can accept more users. So there's a lot of scalability in the internet. And if we do research with tech companies, their vision of the future, they will do roadmaps, and their roadmaps, other than one company, I've never seen their roadmaps go longer than 36 months, because the world gets reinvented every 36 months because the technology changes so fast. And even that last 12 months is a little sketchy. So in the foreseeable future, over the next 36 months, there'll be a lot of noise about it, politics and economics and technology, but basically the internet will learn how to scale. And by that I mean the companies involved, ranging from net neutrality to pricing to all different kinds of things like that.
Rick, if the world reinvents itself every 36 months,
Yeah.
and the back 12 months are sketchy, how can you project 5-year revenues out on any medium?
No, we're asking the tough one.
First of all, Dr. Fraktrick does that, not me. No, what happens is, his home number, let me type it in. No, there's, exactly. There's a couple of things that are curious. The 36-month turnover is technology. And that's fundamental technology, like silicon, chipsets. And so from the technology future, I'll answer that. From the forecasting future, advertiser spending behavior changes a lot slower than technology. So going out 5 years for spending behavior, we make assumptions about, like when Google does their 10K or 10Qs, we see what the traffic is for searches, what the click-through is. We look at all those kind of metrics and just model that curve. So that's an input, that's a driver. We look at the general economic conditions. And so the economy, who knows? I mean, if we were geniuses at our company, we wouldn't be working for a living. So, but we try to identify relevant drivers, forecast them out, normalize them as best we can from several different sources, and then, okay, that's our forecast. So is it correct? We do our forecast and release it around the first of the year. And let me think. Oh yes, we do updates regularly to that forecast. So, it's you just try to get your model as tight as you can and revise it and add learning into the model so it gets better next time around. From a technology perspective, what's going to happen? What's going to be in people's hands? That's actually a little bit easier to predict. The technology itself, consumers' response to it is a little bit harder to predict. So the chip that goes in here, the Qualcomm chip that goes into this, the people that build that chip, Freescale, Qualcomm, Samsung, they have a 36-month roadmap. So we know 36 months from now what the chipset is going to be able to do in a mobile phone, because they have to commit to it. They have to get the design, they have to do all the microcode testing and regression testing, they have to fab it, they have to get into the pipeline, and then all the consumer and handset manufacturers have to buy it. So for 3 years from now, exactly what the chipset's going to do. Then you have to have the application development. That's maybe another 12 to 18 months. Then it goes into the whole consumer cycle. So we can know pretty well 5 years out or more what the technology is going to be capable of. I don't know what this phone's going to look like until I know what Qualcomm chipset's going to look like. Well, here's what that's going to look like, so here's my software plan. Who knew that iPads were going to take off so fast? I mean, maybe. But he made some other bets that weren't so happy, so you don't necessarily know. So yeah.
Nobody always thought so.
He always, well, that's critical, because if he doesn't think so,
He's always right. He just
yeah,
always thought so.
right. Yep.
With the broadband, if the providers in the short run found it necessary to use the price to control the usage, and it's not this all-you-can-eat necessarily for everybody, would that not have a ripple effect backward people's ability to use or willingness to use some of these?
Oh, absolutely. So, you know, the classic horror stories, holiday season, New York, AT&T halts sales of iPhone because of bandwidth congestion. Publicity stunt, policy, positioning move, or actual technology
But
fact.
I've even read where Comcast is talking about going to a usage-based
Right.
setup, so that my cable modem wouldn't necessarily give, I can't just, I now all of a sudden have to, like the old days when I had dial-up and I had so many hours or minutes or whatever.
Right.
I mean, all of a sudden on my cell phone, you know, I've only got this many minutes. What if I all of a sudden have to start thinking of that? Now I start making value judgments about what do I want to use my time
Right.
to accomplish. And I think that if in the short run, these all-you-can-eat pricing, flat rate pricing goes away on various things, even right down to the internet in our home, that could be really, in some ways, devastating on the advancement of some of these new technologies.
I think, I hear what you're saying, but I think the human response to that increasing complexity may not be so easy to map out. So for example, if you nobody just buys an airplane ticket anymore. The ticket price is just the opening bid. Then it's like, where do you want to sit? And do you want to have early entry to the plane? And do you want the secret code to the escape hatch when a plane has a landing on water? So there's yeah. So there's all these upgrades. So you can't just buy a plane ticket. You have to buy a constellation of things. And then once you get in, if you want cold water, that's 50 cents instead of warm water. So
But
people are
think about Pandora for a second though. If you weren't in an at home or on your phone,
right.
all of a sudden I'm going to think twice about how often
I think that's right.
tune or
Right. And so what are some responses to that? If I'm Pandora and I want people to use my service 31 hours a month because then I turn them into a subscription subscriber instead of a free subscriber, I don't want you to be price sensitive to getting to that hurdle because I'd like to have you be converted. So what do? Well, I'm going to bundle that price in somewhere else. I'll see if I can get more from an advertiser. I'll see if I can jack up my subscription price a little bit more and bundle in some of the bandwidth costs. When I set up my peering arrangements, I mean, in prime time, 40% of the bits hurtling through the core part of the internet are Netflix bits. And they probably don't pay a fair share of that. So there's been some negotiating in the core bandwidth part of the internet. And when we talk about internet, it's important. There's a few different segments of it. The core bandwidth is basically infinite. There's tons of core bandwidth. It's the access networks, the telephone lines, the cable lines, and the wireless, the 3G, 4G lines, where it starts to get a little bit congested. But for the content's the game. If I want to earn money off my content, and my customers are reluctant to buy my content because this movie costs $10 and this movie costs $5. So what's the difference? Well, that one's 30 minutes longer. It's like, oh. That's not the way people are used to buying movies. So all movies will be $7.50, and I'll just bundle into my cost basis bandwidth. And so when I go to level 3 or Akamai or Limelight, if I'm Netflix or Hulu or somebody like that, I'll say, I need you to guarantee me a certain quality of service for my customers, and here's how much I'll pay you for this much traffic, and if it increases to this level, here's how much I'll pay you for that much traffic.
Yeah, but so you're thinking almost like having a toll-free phone number. I'll pay
Right.
the long distance, not you.
I think that's good insight. I think that may be where things move to in the marketplace. And right now, people do have, in most parts of the country, they have competition about bandwidth providers. And some of that's subsidized with rural fiber being built out. But I think you'll see competition in pricing and packaging, and we don't really necessarily know what the consumers will accept. Again, early days in Canada, the pay-as-you-go isn't happy face. We like flat rate pricing. We like it to be invisible. The other way to go is sort of micropayments, where it's only 1/10 of a cent. Well, I don't care. And then if you have 1/1000 of a cents, it adds up, but it becomes invisible to the consumer. I mean, another thing, you can just reposition things in consumers' minds. Another one of my things was doing free TV promotions. So I said, before you do free TV, you may want to ask Americans what they think free TV is before you start promoting the free TV as a benefit. And say, what are you talking about? And I said, I think in Americans' minds, free TV is basic cable. So we did some research, and what's free TV? It's basic cable. Pay TV means, you know, the sports package or HBO, and people don't know what they don't know what over-the-air local TV is. So free TV to most people in America is basic cable. Cutting the cord. Okay, so going over the top, we talked about that content. These are just sort of the drill down. Oh yes, so HD radio. One, you know, what is the formula for success? So we've kind of talked about that. So
Certainly not that spelling.
I don't want you to leave. What? Formula. It's a. I haven't had much sleep lately. It was early in the morning. I took a plane at 5:25, and I got home last night at 11. But anyway, regardless of my spelling craftsmanship here, I do have the secret. Don't want to have you go home from here without seeing this formula to success. So copy it down. Probably, you know, I know that Jeff Smillian's been really huge about these guys here and getting at least an analog FM chip in there, because it's what they call a BOM, the bill of materials. They're also cheap for analog. If we can get HD chips in this is what people have. So I always love to do this. You're all radio guys. Raise your hand if you have a radio with you. Raise your hand if you have a cell phone with you. So I mean, it's distribution. You got to get to the market, and that's actually a formula for a Fourier transform. So it actually is HD radio.
But one thing I'm curious about that whole
Yeah.
that whole initiative is that at the same speed that they're going to do that, isn't you going to be able to just stream your favorite radio station on the same device?
Yeah, and I think this goes back to one of your general points, Tom, is increasingly it makes more sense to not trip up over how you're getting to the market, just get to the market. And if you can get to the market more than one way, I mean, I don't know about 6 nets that have more or less big holes, but the people are over there, and I want to figure out as many ways as I can get to those people as I can, because I want to monetize them through at least advertising, and perhaps there's other ways I can monetize them as well.
Jeff doesn't want to pay bandwidth costs. Honest to God.
I see. Is that what the deal is?
He doesn't, every time he gets a listener online, it costs him money. And so it's a bandwidth issue.
Sure. Well, and he believes.
No, it's a band. He doesn't want to pay.
Royalties.
And well, the royalty too, but it costs him money every time somebody listens online. Right. But if it's over the air, that's free.
Well, and he believes very strongly. We had a number of long conversations after our meeting last year, and he is of firm belief that at some point in the near future that the data costs are going to keep going up and up and up and up. And when the consumer gets a $100 data bill for listening to Pandora, they're going to come back to all of his radio stations.
And I think there's a potential for rediscovery of local broadcasting as over the air and as free. I may have told this story before, but it's one of my favorites. We get ice storms in DC, and in my neighborhood we lose power for days at a time. So we were one of our 5-day without power, and our across the street neighbors are in their mid-30s. Invited them over. We had a generator. We have a coral reef tank, so we have to keep things alive. So we had a little generator going. Invited them over Sunday afternoon, drink beer, watching football. And all of a sudden, have I told this story before to you guys? No. Okay. So all of a sudden, my across the street neighbor, Gordon, goes, "What are we doing?" So I said, "Drinking beer, watching football." And he says, "We're watching TV." And I said, "Good, Gordon. You're coming along well." Exactly. And he says, "No, I mean, we're watching TV. How are we doing it?" And I said, "I got a generator." And he goes, "The cable's out. What's going on?" So I said, "It's over the air." He's 35 years old, got an MBA, and he said, "What are you talking about?" Brought him outside. "See that thing on my roof?" And he says, "Yeah, I was wondering what that was." "That's a TV antenna."
You're a spy.
"Oh my God, that's a TV antenna." And it gets local TV stations over the air for free. You don't need a cable. And this is the best part for me. He says, "No shit, they can do that now?" That's why I'm convinced Americans don't know what TV or radio is.
My Evo has an FM tuner in it, and it's actually pretty good. I wish it had a little better antenna in it, but I can, when I visit and I'm trying to listen to the station, you know, those clock radios in the hotel are just crap and they're useless. You can't even get. But my Evo often will pick up with a little headset. It uses the headset as the antenna,
Right.
which is the part that I'm not enamored with yet. But that little unit, I can have the FM tuner running, and I can still have access to my entire, as a consumer, I have access to the entire data stream yet for doing email and all
Right.
the other
That's
stuff
awesome.
I'm going to do while I'm listening. And my time spent on a laptop has gone to virtual zero since I got that phone, because the screen is just big enough that I can, you know, I haven't had a need for an iPad or anything
Right.
since I got that phone.
So, I mean, that's the kind of
Maybe
benefit
once my eyes
statement.
get a little worse, I notice that it's getting a little too small. But I really think that from a consumer standpoint only, forget that I have a dog in the hunt on the radio side of it. I think that the ability to have that phone multitask without giving up something is important.
That's huge. So, I mean, that's a very important consumer benefit
Beta
statement.
testing our mobile phone apps with the radio station.
Right.
The ability to run the station in the background and then go back and do other things
Right.
is critical. Nobody will use the app unless it does that.
Yeah, and that's so huge. Like these things are the platform of choice for connectivity for a huge number of Americans. And the big news is pretty soon you'll be able to run 2 apps at once. That's like, well, that's like, 20 years ago in this thing. And so that's huge news, and it's a huge benefit. And people are saying, yay, they're cheering it instead of what took you so long. So, I mean, there's some learning maybe we could do from the consumer electronics and tech side of things and figure out what those benefits are, map them into a nice bundle.
They really seem to silo the capabilities
Yeah.
of everything.
Right.
They don't
Right.
compare, like, gee, it's not.
Right.
I compare it to my laptop because I'm like, I can do anything I can do on my laptop on this.
Right.
But most people, I think, just silo that.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So you can't really read this. I went to the Credit Suisse conference I mentioned, and this is one of the blog posts I did. We had Harry DeMott, one of the guys involved with the funding of Pandora, Ted Cohen, kind of a music guy. I know some of you know him, and Eyal Goldberger from Target Spot. So they were on a panel, they were talking, it was sort of fun. They were talking about streaming Pandora versus local radio. So you can't really read this, but Harry DeMott says, okay, so I was in Pandora, and one of my best buddies was a big executive at Cox Radio. And he said kind of what we were saying earlier today, Pandora, it just doesn't cut it. There's no discovery, it's boring. You should listen to my stations, we program them better. They said, no way. I mean, Pandora's got this music genome thing happening, and it's personalized, and it's perfect. So he said, but I'll take your challenge. So he went through the Cox inventory and found 5 markets and formats he liked. And he looked at those playlists, and he looked at his Pandora playlists, and he came back and he said, Uncle, you win. The Cox programming is better. So, there's one example, kind of powerful person.
More adventurous?
Yes, it's a good, exactly right. That was the key point. So just to make that explicit, the balance between what I like and is familiar to discovery, that's a huge benefit that broadcast radio brings that Pandora doesn't bring. And the different services, you can have a sliding scale, discovery versus familiar, but at least in this one, my extensive sample of one with a statistical error of plus or minus, broadcast radio wins. So that human element of playlist development and management, at least in one case, worked. Yeah.
I think there's that whole point of perception which Sean was bringing up this morning too. I find pretty interesting where radio hasn't used it to its best advantage. A few years ago, I got an email from a listener saying, "Would you please stop playing the same 3 Van Morrison songs over and over and over again? It's driving me crazy." He had a lot more music than that. So I went into the database and I looked, and sure enough, we were playing 21 Van Morrison songs. Pretty equal distribution, able to check pretty quickly. So I wrote him back and I said, excellent suggestion. Please keep listening for the next few weeks and email me back and tell me if you hear any other Van songs, because we think what you said is really important. Sure enough, 3 weeks later, thanks so much. I heard all these songs that I hadn't heard before, and I didn't even hear the other 3, and that is great. Didn't change a thing, just program the radio station.
Right. Yeah.
did not touch.
But he loves that AM stereo too.
But for if, people get into mindsets.
That's right.
What they think is happening, which Pandora's done a brilliant job with.
Yeah.
This is better radio. You're right, it is better radio.
It's, I mean, yeah, just another quick example of perception. We're talking about HD radio. I was involved with some stuff for HD TV, and this is also kind of remarkable where 2 rooms, you go to this room, you go to that room, and then switch. Okay, which video did you like better? Oh, I liked, room B, it was way better. And that was the same video in both rooms. The only difference was the audio. In room B, the audio was, high fidelity, digital, stereo, beautiful audio, and the other one is just sort of standard TV audio. So the audio experience enhanced the perception of the video quality. So it's like, I really like that HD video, it's terrific. It's like, okay.
What we should do, John, is do like what went on when the boys wanted you to say you have a better variety. You say it for a year, and all of a sudden you got a better variety, and you didn't change a thing.
Until a real estate says it too.
But Rick, back to your example of the Cox radio station.
Sure.
So he's willing to listen to 12 to 15 minutes of commercials per hour.
Yeah.
Well, no, on Cox, it's probably less.
There-
Fox is
so-
probably a lot less.
There's a couple, so
More.
Well, still, say 12 minutes an hour.
Yeah.
He's willing to listen to 12 minutes an hour versus 0.
So this is over, this is, obviously anecdotal, one person, and the point that he was pursuing was really the playlist between a format that he likes on Cox versus a station he created on Pandora.
Right.
So he didn't comment on the advertising, the spot load. And there's also something else that's sort of obvious, the element in the room. If he doesn't happen to live in one of those 5 Cox markets, he's out of luck.
The other thing is, he's told the computers how wide a range of
Yeah.
music he was interested
Exactly.
in hearing too.
Right.
So he may have narrowed it down inadvertently on his own and limited.
Exactly. So his is he an expert Pandora user or not? Does he live in one of those 5 Cox markets where that has a format or not? But so it's not, the story doesn't hold water once you test it. But the illustration really was Pandora is not necessarily the killer. I mean, there's ways to combat it, and there's strengths and weaknesses to every proposition. What I was going to have a bunch of slides here kind of going through the media platforms. I'm really coming up on my time, so I'm just going to flash through these. Directional media, which is, has anyone heard the term directional media? No. I never heard of it until we bought the Kelsey Group and found out it meant yellow pages. But so now you can be directional media experts. Yeah, it's like a directory.
Oh.
So it's like that.
Because it's direct and it's down.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, so we bought this company, and their core expertise was in directional media. And I said, that's really cool. Wasn't it? And they said, you don't know? And I said, no. Well, if you want me to start the list of things I don't know, it's going to take a while. But so yeah, directory somehow became directional, and it's cooler than yellow pages, right? Was there a hand?
I was gonna
Yeah.
say, it's part of like an intentional strategy
Yeah.
on their part, because what they're really trying to do is reposition the whole entire
Exactly.
sales force as experts on internet advertising, essentially.
Exactly.
Directing consumers to you through the
Exactly right. And we actually love that because they have very large sales forces that know very little about all these other media, so they hire us.
So call it H directory.
HD, yeah, exactly. You have a digital directory, and it's much better than the other one. So the industry, obviously, I showed you the revenue trend is going down. So when you see that happening, people start looking for bargains. So there will be consolidation in that industry. I'm going to skip through some of these things.
You're fine with time.
Oh, okay.
Rick, one thing I want to ask you about, especially relative to the yellow pages, is when I was at the Ivan, what's his name from Hip Cricket, had just come from this Yellow Pages conference, and
right.
he said, "Wow," he said, "they are so organized. They have totally reinvented themselves. They have this really cohesive message,
Right.
and they're retraining this. And they're all their local sales force all over the country,
Right.
and they are going to go out there and they are going to tell people they are experts on the internet. And what are we going to do about it?"
Exactly.
I'm curious if you're seeing any traction in that or anything. I actually just had an opportunity to be called on by them.
Right.
And I took it, to hear the presentation,
Right.
it is 180 degrees from what they used to come in with.
Exactly.
And I was kind of scared and impressed at the same time.
Right. Yeah, Jim and I were talking about that at lunch. I mean, they invest a lot in training. They invest a lot in quality of salesperson. They'll pay, the comp plan is a lot scaled up from other media. So they get higher end people, they train them, they invest in them, and support them when they do their sales. So it's a different sales culture, different sales leadership.
The lady that called on me was going through a prescribed process, and her laptop was driving the whole
Exactly, yeah.
thing. She
No,
made no decisions in the
Yeah.
whole process.
Yep. So it's right. They're very disciplined, and now that I know what directional media are, as I've continued to learn more about them, they have an impressive culture.
Are you seeing that the online versions now that they've switched to and are promoting very heavily on television like Dex is having an effect? I mean, I haven't looked at any studies that have shown what the usage is or how many people are going to Dex for that information. What do you know?
This is the issue. What they're selling is becoming free. Everyone is offering listings. And so that's one of the reasons why their revenues are trending down. So the consolidation will help their cost basis. They'll get some operating efficiencies. I mean, you want to see that in public companies. But essentially, what they're selling is becoming commoditized because everybody has listings. I mean, Craigslist hammered newspaper classifieds, and it's also hurting these guys. And then Google Places comes in, it's free. And not only is it free, I'll give you video, I'll give you a website, I'll give a map to the consumer to bring you right there, and they can have, coupons. It's like, that's not bad for free. How much would you give me if I pay $25 a month? Oh my gosh, So Google Places comes in and does the same thing, only much more powerfully, and you've got the Google brand and Facebook and those kind of things. It's like
And you don't end up with the first choice of a steak restaurant 35 miles away because they pay to be at the top when there's four right around you, which blows your complete experience of the
And that's part of the sales proposition. Google Places, I mean, local is hot, but their issue is they don't have a local sales force. I mean, the directional media killed the local sales force idea, and local radio can too. But as Google Places comes in there, it has to be self-serve in order to get to any kind of scalability and telesales.
I'm not sure that that's entirely accurate because
What? I said something not accurate?
Through a center where my wife has a store location, and she took a photo of the storefront.
Yeah.
It uploaded to Google Places, and then Google mailed us a card in the mail that said one of our canvassers was there, put some basic information in. Please now log in and enhance your listing. And oh, by the way, if you want to advertise in Google.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. So the basic listing's free.
But they had boots on the ground.
Right.
Literally took a picture of our store.
Oh no, they're starting to do that. Absolutely. But it's a scaling issue for them. That's very capital.
It wasn't a sales rep per se.
Yeah.
But it was,
No, so the basic listings are free. That's their model, to upsell them to the $25 a month package, exactly. And when I say they don't have local feet on the street, that's an overstatement. They do. They're picking and choosing their markets, but their issue is how quickly can they scale? And as they start to hurt the local media will have a competitive response. Well, screw you, Google. We think we can do something better. So the Yahoos and they're our customers, so I have to be careful. But we can't get local feet on the street like you guys can. But we want to beat you. I know. Let's partner. And so that's one of the strategies: is partner with the traditional media.
I don't know though. Google Earth can take a photograph of every house in the world and put it on Google Earth, which they do. Somebody's out there taking.
Oh no, they're there, but it's.
I mean, I don't know how they afford that. I mean, they take every street. I don't know if you've ever Google Earth your own house, but they're pictures of your front yard, the guy next to you looking down the street.
It's actually not that big of a problem logistically if you think of all the things that we do.
Somebody took those pictures.
Yeah, so it's fuel cost, it's cars, and it's $5 an hour people, and you just mass out. It's really not that.
But we're talking, the whole country.
It's not that big of a. Yeah, I mean.
As a matter of fact, what I thought was even more amazing is coming next on Google, and I think it's just next year. You'll be able to say you're standing in front of a church. I could walk down here and I take a picture of that church and I Google it in, and Google will tell me the name of the church where I'm located.
They do that now. And in fact, I mean, I didn't talk about this in this presentation, but augmented reality. Yeah. So I mean, I can do that, and I can, oh, there's Starbucks, and if I go in, I can have $1 off my $15 coffee. There's Chico's. If I go in there, I can buy 2 scarves for one and be a hero with my wife. So it's like, that's where we're getting to. And so that technology is there and commercially deployed. Google's had, so it's, yeah, it's all, so the problem of mapping everything is, conceptually trivial. It only becomes difficult in scale, but it's actually not that obviously hard of a problem to solve. And it's important to kind of realize that. I mean, we can map a human genome. So there are things that are computationally difficult. Boy, that's a lot of work. It's like, that doesn't really matter anymore because you can solve a lot of work problems easily. And so from a competitive strategy perspective, don't stop yourself. I mean, when you do your brainstorming, say, oh, we can't do that. It's like, really? Maybe we can. Because there are companies like the Googles out there saying, it's not an impossible task to map every street in America. We can do that. So is it an impossible task to knock on every single door, and every single small and medium business door in a market in 6 weeks? It's like, oh, I don't think we can do that. Well, the directional media do that. So rethink impossible.
Rick, if I could.
Sure.
I'd be happy to hold it. But it seems to me that the elephant in the room for Google and for Facebook is that people elect to opt out of the data collection.
Sure, right.
And I believe that they're going to have that option at some point.
Right.
FTC is already considered.
Right. Yeah, so that's going to be a driver or an inhibitor for business growth there. So one thing that happens is there's already a practice of merging databases. So if I have a few bits here, a few bits there, a few bits there, I can mingle that together and come up with a really granular view of individuals or neighborhoods or zip codes. So if I don't learn about you, I can learn enough about your neighbor so I can still get some targeted advertising. But I know my kids are in their 20s now. Their notion of what is private is entirely different than my notion of private.
Really?
I mean,
Say more about that.
And a lot of apps or services give you a reason to register, and as long as the reason is good, again, you can't use Pandora unless you register. So if you want to use the service, you got to do that, which gives them access to all that information.
And yeah, and that's an important driver. So there was an article, and I mean, there's all kinds of articles, but I think it was this week in the Wall Street Journal, was another article about privacy and security and stuff like that. And they're doing interviews with people, and it's like, they don't care. As long as I get some benefit, take my information. And in fact, an interesting response that was in this Wall Street article this week, to your point, Jim, was like, okay, yeah, I can opt out unless you make it worth my while. So people are getting paid to provide their data. That's kind of a response to that privacy issue. So in this Wall Street Journal article, there's a guy, he earns like 10, 20 bucks a month from selling his data. So it says, cool, I can buy some of those Starbucks coffees now. So who knows what will happen next? I mean, who would have thought that I would get, payments to my PayPal account for revealing the fact that I have a PayPal account?
Following through on that, I want to say almost 30 years ago, I was in New Jersey, AT&T did a presentation, said the bandwidth is going to go out the wazoo. Matter of fact, we're going to be able to offer so many different kinds of channels, so we can't even conceive of what we put on them. Maybe birds chirping, we don't know. And so we sat there kind of stunned hearing this presentation. We said, well then, how do you envision the future? Who's going to discern what? He said, well, we kind of puzzled through that, and our best scenario was that the channel would pay the viewer to watch the program.
Sure, that's possible.
Give them an incentive. Maybe it's a discount at the store.
Yeah.
Sears would produce a program, say, if you watch our program, we'll give you a discount to shop Sears.
Right.
And so, is that
Yeah, it's been tried out. I mean,
is that going to come, or is that just an idea that didn't happen?
It sort of comes now. I mean, you get points for doing more things like the Foursquare, the mayor thing. You get points for doing certain things. You can motivate people. Going back to the green stamp days, something like that will come back in some form.
That was the only model we could think of at the time, was green stamp.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah. So that's out there. People are trying that.
Open Table gives you points every time you make a reservation.
Has anybody ever actually cashed in their open points? Open Table points? Have you ever looked at that? I said, okay. So it's like, oh, these points are sort of interesting. So I can't remember that actually affected my choice of restaurants, but the fact that I'm accumulating points is vaguely pleasant.
Yeah.
But then I said, well, so what do I have for...
Collect them.
Right, so I have some points, and so what can I do with them? So I looked it up, and you need like 1 million points to get, you know, ice in your water or something.
I don't use it for the points, I use it for the ease of making a reservation.
Absolutely. So the points are like, you can take the points away and I'd still use it. But the points, as far as I can tell, are absolutely meaningless.
It's like airline miles are becoming more and more meaningless.
Oh, what I don't like is not only are they more and more meaningless, they take them off the table. Like I had a whole bunch of miles on one carrier, and I went to use it, and my count was 0. And I said, what? US Air is exactly right. So I said, oh, wait a minute, I had a free ticket, and now it's 0?
At 60,000 miles, it's,
Exactly.
Yeah, I got a notice from City Air Miles that use it or lose it. And so I thought, well, what if I accrue? Because I've only been building these things up on a flat out since like, I don't know, 20 years. And I had enough to do maybe a flight to California and back. That was it. But I got to use it or lose it. So I'm going to.
Well, now American Airlines charges you to use your miles.
Yeah.
No.
So it goes back to the
United.
point you're making about you know, privacy, what's going to happen there, and then who knows? I mean, people are willing to do things, accept payments, or pay for things that you wouldn't necessarily have predicted. So it's like, oh, I'm going to pay to use my free miles. Like,
Yeah, right.
There's a service charge.
basic cable is free TV.
You
There's
don't own the airline ticket anyway.
Pardon me?
You don't own the airline ticket. The airline owns the airline ticket.
let's see. Let me pick a. What time frame should I use?
Oh, another 5 minutes.
Okay, so I'm just gonna, so you'll get these, thank you. These are, so mobile, yeah, apps versus mobile web, you guys are facing this. What's gonna happen is, okay, if I have an application for a cell phone, I have to do Android, I have to do Apple, I have to do iPhone, I now have to do iPad, I have to do BlackBerry, it's crazy. So where the world's going is more towards web-based applications. You don't have to have a whole tree of apps for all these different OSs, all the different operating systems on the mobile platforms. So if you guys follow David Kennedy, what he's doing now with AppMobi, I mean that's kind of his bet with that company is you develop once and let that code, let that application run seamlessly through a browser interface. The issue was if you want to know somebody's location or leverage things, low-level drivers on a device like a camera or something like that, it had to be a resident application. But the developers are getting more clever about using browser-based solutions. So what will happen is this craziness of having all these different application and code branches trying to maintain will start to disappear, and software will take care of it instead of developers, and it'll be sort of automatic. So that will, the implication there is that mobile is growing fast. It's going to grow even faster, and it'll be easier for you to use as media people. You won't have to make all these decisions about Apple and Android and things like that. It'll just be, you pay somebody to develop once, HTML5. It'll leverage all the different power of the mobile devices. So it's sort of happy news that using mobile media will become easier from a content publisher's perspective.
Chris Anderson said the web was dead.
Pardon me?
In Wired magazine.
The web is down, yeah. What's his face? Chris Anderson, yeah. Yeah, but he recanted that a little bit if you followed follow-ups to the story. Yeah, the web is dead because the browser-based experience is different. Yeah, I kind of talked about that. Search, yeah, we talked about the augmented reality, visual voice search will become a much more interesting set of interfaces. People are going to buy more on, sorry, I'm blocking the way here. Mobile shopping, just generally the mobile device is going to become more and more compelling and more integrated into people's lifestyles. I'm going to flash through this. We just started a new service focused just on social media. We did a forecast. Yeah, social media spending is going to grow pretty large. We have a webinar, and these slides are drawn from that webinar. It's free. It's on our website. It's on demand. So I'm going to, rather than spend the time here, I'm just going to kind of flash through these and have a couple of comments. Small and medium businesses are now spending their attention and their money on social media. About half of small and medium businesses now work with Facebook, which is probably more than half a website. So it's capturing the attention of these small and medium businesses. Yeah, so 48% are using Facebook. They're using Twitter, and it drives a lot of business. So some examples like pizza chains will tweet out, come between 6 and 8, and we'll give you $5 off a pizza, and it drives a lot of response. And so anytime you see that kind of engagement from consumers and response in a short time frame, the businesses love it, the ecosystem. Facebook, 48%. This just goes through some statistic about it. The email, other kind of social network. Twitter is sort of interesting. Would you think that Twitter users skew older or younger? The kids use Twitter? Yeah, kids don't use Twitter. They don't even know what you're talking about. They use texting. It's sort of interesting.
But Rick, when you talk about money migrating to social media, it doesn't cost me anything to tweet, but it's going to cost me labor.
Right.
I mentioned this yesterday that I have a friend here who's an advertiser that spends something in the neighborhood of $300,000 on local radio, and she loves Facebook, and she has to really work hard to spend $4,000 or $5,000 on Facebook.
Yeah, it's an issue because these businesses are allocating their budgets, ad and promotions budgets, into Twitter campaigns, even if it doesn't cost to tweet. And there are some costs too. If you want to go through aggregators and things like that, you have to have some arrangements to do that. Maybe you want to go through a provider like Vibes or somebody like that. So there are some costs for doing the campaigns. But it costs less than other alternatives. And if you see the response, I mean, direct mail, we saw the businesses love that. And if you get 0.5%, that's a pretty good response. If you all of a sudden flood your store with people responding to the Twitter campaign, that's pretty huge.
I mean, one of the reasons these campaigns are so cheap on Facebook is it's so incredibly targeted.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're not buying the whole market.
Right.
Or the whole island.
Well, why do you have to pay anything? If you just set up your Facebook page and get fans, you can just.
But you want to reach people who haven't become fans of you yet.
But on a local level.
Yeah, and even just, I mean, so they don't.
They're not doing it in my market.
Yeah, so just.
They can do it for free.
So people, it's staffing or outsourcing the development of the creative around what's going on Facebook. I mean, they're, like Jim was saying, it's relatively small dollars, but they're starting to shift their attention over to the social media platform.
Right.
And
Facebook advertising platform is really easy to use. You can target by gender, age, geography. Like somebody could go to Williamsburg and they could say, I only want to advertise to, they can construct their ad in a few minutes. It allows one graphic and then text.
Right.
And it's all just an upload the graphic, type in your text kind of thing. And then you could say, I only want to talk to men over 40 in Williamsburg or in York, pick one.
Yeah.
You can designate the cities, and it will only
You can
display
designate
the
the zip codes.
Yeah, zip code. You can designate it by city or zip, and or state. There's all different levels, and then you tell it how much you're willing to spend, and you bid,
Right.
just like an AdWords campaign, and then it will it'll tick through it. We did one in Franklin for a business that I design all their radio campaign, and they said we want to do Facebook. I said okay, so we helped them out, and we spent I think $600 on this campaign. For the last 10 days up to Christmas, we promoted gift cards, and we only went to people who were within a radius, and they got 2.7 million exposures just in two city designations.
How many people live in the two cities?
I would estimate it at about, if it was 100,000, it's a lot.
So
We had
everybody looked at it a whole bunch
It
of
was
times.
adults 25-54, and we got 2.7 million exposures in 10 days.
Now, they got the exposure to
We
the
got-
people that you directed it to, plus all of their friends.
And we got,
It's
yes.
a
Who
logarithmic.
who weren't necessarily in the market.
Yeah, that's.
Oh, no, it will only display it
But how did it get to, then people must have gone back and
No.
back and back and looked at it.
only if they shared it.
No, but I'm saying if it's.
Frequency.
No, but
If
think
there's
about
only
it.
100,000 people in the market and they got 2-point-something million, then that means the same
Yeah.
people are seeing it over and over.
Right.
No, not necessarily, remember
But you
that
don't need
they,
frequency is the point of their whole thing, because you're there and you're already.
Tom, I looked at our Facebook fans, one of our radio stations, and went in, this is a quick and dirty look, but we counted the number of friends that each of these people had.
Right.
And our Facebook fans have an average of 300 friends.
Right.
So if the, this message is sent out and they click on it, they like it, it's going to be transmitted to everybody in their friend network.
Huge
that
network
doesn't mean that
effect.
every single person is going to click that they like it and send a message out to their friends.
It also doesn't mean that they live there. I mean, they live all over the country.
Way beyond what you're.
Right.
The ROI, the paying Christmas rates, we ended up paying 90, I think it was like 92 cents for every.
Exactly.
And we generated 968 additional trackable gift card sales. And when we added the whole campaign up, the ROI was very scared. I was afraid to show it to them because it was right in line with the radio campaign, which we invest far many more thousands into. And then we did over Valentine's Day with the sports station in Nashville, we did a Twitter-only contest for Valentine's Day over 8 days. And just with the jocks at the station tweeting their the way you entered was you retweeted the thing. And we had about, we are not active on Twitter, we had about, I think 40 people were following us on Twitter when this thing started. 10 days later, 400 people were following us on Twitter.
What market was this?
In Nashville. It was I told the station, I said, you guys are dumb if you don't start promoting this with everybody you can think of, because most advertisers at a local level are dumb enough or unsophisticated enough, to be fair, they're unsophisticated enough to think that going from 40 to 400 Twitter followers is a great thing for me, right? I'll put a lot of value on that. I know my client did, and I'm sitting there going, okay, 360 people, wahoo. But they view it as potential customers, and they put a very high perceived value on it.
They have, I think we're coming up on my time here. There's a whole bunch more slides in the deck. You'll get that. Let me just close on this one now. Come back to a theme of, like Thomas Ann and other people, about being local media companies. We do surveys, as I mentioned, of businesses, so you can't read this, but you will in the deck when you get it. What's the biggest challenge or area of need that your local business clients experience in their social media marketing and advertising efforts? Just looking at social media stuff, which has really captured the kind of attention and imagination of a number of these businesses. And it's organizing workflow and assigning staff to execute social media, tailoring particular social media efforts to target specific audience, developing a plan for integrating social media into advertising and media, blah, blah, blah. So they have a lot of operational, conceptual, and execution issues. And so, you know the drill. You go into an advertiser, go into an auto dealer, and you're not the first seller that they've seen all day. And their problem is not necessarily which radio station to buy. It's like, I want to drive sales, and I know I have all these media platforms. Other than my agency, maybe, no one's given me a thoughtful, coherent picture of how to use media effectively. I know I'm not going to put 100% radio, but I do know that advertising works. Help me. It's getting more complicated, maybe more excited. If you can help me solve my overall problem in a trusted, kind of sustainable way. And if you approach them as a media company with, a basket of solutions, not just radio, and that's how you get up to 30% digital revenue from even 7%, which is pretty nice, and the average of even less than that. So I will share the deck with Jamie. He'll send it around to you guys and take a look at that. Some of the slides are fairly self-explanatory. Some of them may be mysterious because they require a voiceover to go along with them. So feel free to get in touch with me.
Phone number, we'll call them at 3 o'clock.
Exactly. Please do. Yes. All right.